Mr. Yazdi, you wanted to say?
Yes, you see, as he mentioned about, Mr. Kamran mentioned about the support of the Baluchis or the separatists, and then in Khuzestan, that is intervention, although it was not effective, but however, it was a sort of the intervention in Iranian internal affairs. Another thing is that the Americans, this present administration has lost a very valuable opportunities to improve the relation with Iran. In case of Afghanistan, Iran did everything to cooperate with America in order to topple the Taliban. And what Iran got from that, from the United States? In 9/11, after the 9/11, Mr. Khatami and many of the Iranian high officials, they openly expressed their condolences and the sympathy for the victims of that crime. And many Iranians, they just gathered in the public places and observed 1 minute silence, or in the football match in the stadium, they did. The many Iranians, they signed the book in the American intersection in Swiss embassy. But what the Iranian got in return for that one? The United States government did nothing, did not respond to the Iranian cooperation in case of Afghanistan, whether it was in Taliban, in Afghanistan, or it was in Bonn, in bringing all the factions together. Instead, the President of the United States named Iran along with the Saddam, along with the North Korea.
Okay, Mr. Yazdi, I'm going to jump in here because I want to make sure everybody gets an equal chance to speak to this. The point he's making, though, Kamran, is it not, I mean, does it not speak to the issue that many people in Iran just don't believe that American officials can be made a deal with, that they keep their word on things? Is that not a fair conclusion?
No, of course. That is a fair assessment. Given the history of U.S.-Iranian relations, or the lack of relations since the 1979 revolution and the snapping of ties, both sides have a lot to mistrust. I mean, the Iranians have done things that the U.S. mistrusts, and the Iranian involvement in Lebanon with Hezbollah, the Iranian backing for other terrorist groups, militant organizations amongst the Palestinians. So there is mistrust on the U.S. part, and then likewise there's mistrust on the Iranian side because of what the United States has done in terms of the sanctions and the whole view within Iran, within Tehran, particularly, that, you know, ultimately Washington wants to topple this regime, and they will have to acknowledge that the Islamic Republic is here to stay. That's what the Iranians want, and therefore, yes, there is mistrust, and it's going to take a lot more to bring the two sides together. I mean, look at the way they're behaving on Iraq and the back channels, and of course the trilateral talks involving the Iraqis. I mean, you don't see a whole lot of progress.
Well, let me follow up with Mr. Pearl on this, because I think many people on both sides of our border in the past couple of weeks were taken aback by the early retirement of William Fallon, the U.S.'s top military commander in the Middle East. And some say his tone with Iran was too conciliatory, and that's why the administration wanted to push him out the door towards early retirement, and that in doing so, it was sending a signal. Admittedly, this is all in kind of tea leaf reading here, but in doing so, it sent a signal that the U.S. administration was far tougher and intending to get tougher on Iran than previously indicated. Did you read the tea leaves that way, Mr. Pearl?
No, I didn't. I think it just wasn't a very good fit between the Admiral and the administration. And I don't think he was getting along terribly well with General Petraeus. And at the moment, the administration is understandably preoccupied with what General Petraeus is trying to do. But I don't want to allow a statement to stand. It is far from clear that if the people of Iran were free to vote their preference, they would choose an Islamic republic. Far from clear. In fact, there are lots of signs that a free and open election would end this dictatorship that affects people at every level of their lives.
Well, and of course, earlier in the program, we talked to a Tehran University professor who pointed out 1,700 reformist candidates were prohibited from running for office. So I guess in that respect, we don't know how things might have turned out had they been allowed to run. Can you give me your sense, Professor Tahmasabi, about the way things changed in Washington the past couple of weeks, and whether or not General Fallon's dismissal suggested to you that the administration was going to get tougher on Iran?
I don't think that's the case. I think I have to agree with Richard Pearl. I don't think that's the case, but I think both sides are waiting to see the result of each country's election. I think that would be a turning point, and I think it's going to be a very good opportunity for both sides to really take this and start a new page in Iran and U.S. relation.
Well, the parliamentary elections in Iran just took place. Are you saying if Iran is waiting for the American elections?
Definitely.
That's a long time from now.
That's a long time. It's another year or so, isn't it?
Well, it's this November. So but basically what you're saying is status quo until then?
So yes, of course, it will. I mean, look, this is a long history. You are not going to undo it in a short period of time. And let's not forget, U.S. has turned Iran a major player in the region, in the Middle East. So it cannot ignore it. I think the elections in both countries would create a historic opportunity for both countries to revisit their policies.
Well, unless, and Mr. Yazdi, let me bring you in on this, Victoria's potentially right if we get... Hang on one sec, wait for the question. Victoria, I think, is potentially right if you get a Democratic president, but if it's John McCain, would you presume there would be any change in American policy towards Iran?
I'm afraid not. But I do agree that Iraq is a good case, a good opportunity for both sides. There are a lot of issues that both sides, if they cooperate, they can benefit. The stability in Iraq is helpful for Iran, for the Arab neighboring state. But when you say the William failed, what they changed it, it was a bad sign. They send a bad message. It means that they are not willing to cooperate or to come to some agreement with Iran. However, I believe that Iraq is another opportunity for both sides to work together to test if they can get along in some very major issues in the Middle East, and then from there they can move along to solve other problems that they have.
Kamran Bukhari?
Well, I mean, I agree with Professor Tamasebi that, you know, the elections do play a significant role in how each side views the other. There is a window of opportunity now with the elections over in Iran. You have, let's say, from April all the way until August when the American presidential election conventions begin. You have that window of opportunity for the two sides to come together on Iraq, and then perhaps move forward from Iraq to more bilateral issues. But the question...
You think a Bush administration, as it currently sits, lame duck as it is, and with very little popular support as it has, is in a position to do something on Iran right now?
I think it does, but that's what I was going to get to, is that if you look at the U.S. behavior more recently, the way the last meeting was canceled, where the Iranian delegation was in Baghdad and the United States wasn't ready to have the meeting and they had to go back home, that is a sign that the United States is not prepared at this point in time to move forward. Perhaps they don't have the need at this point in time to enhance negotiations with Iran on Iraq. But there is that window of opportunity, because once those conventions begin and then you have the whole presidential campaign in full swing, it's going to be until the next president takes office, until after that, that you can return to this issue.
I want to get Richard Pearl on this, because if he were sitting in Tehran right now advising President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and that would be a very interesting turn of events if that ever did transpire, but if you were, would you advise him to try to make some kind of better deal right now with the Bush administration, or hold off till next January when you get a new president?
Well, I'm not sure it makes that much difference. What I would advise him is that the interests of the Iranian people have been sacrificed on the altar of an Iranian nuclear ambition and Iranian involvement in supporting terrorism. Neither of these is particularly advantageous for the people of Iran. I don't understand Mr. Yazdi when he says that Tehran has an interest in stability in Iraq. All the evidence is that Tehran has been providing explosive devices and in other ways trying to reduce the level of stability, not increase it. I see no evidence that a constructive agreement can be reached with Iran on what Iran does in Iraq, and not least of all because they deny that they're doing what they're doing. So how do you get an agreement to stop something when you deny that you're doing it in the first place?